Hi everyone. Sorry for my appearance. I'm very sick. I'm not feeling very good. For the Teach the Teacher or the Teach the Teacher module this week, in response to PTSD, just to talk about that first video, there was a lot that stuck out to me, especially considering the trauma that these former military soldiers discussed, and they discussed it with such numbness, kind of like a flat affect towards the beginning. Like, it just seemed like it was any other day in the military. These things happen. There was no breakdown, no like raw emotion bleeding through. It was very just like, this is matter of fact. It was life or death, and this is what had to be done. There was a quote that kind of hit me hard by one of the soldiers. He had said, "They're not real people, they're just targets." And I think that this mentality that military soldiers are trained with can be really dangerous, not only in combat situations, but coming back home. It teaches people that people aren't intended to be treated like people. So I just thought that was really interesting, the way that he phrased that they're not real people. And a lot of them had described having an out-of-body experience. So they had talked about feeling like the air had frozen around them and that they could grab a bullet out of the air. And I thought that was very interesting to hear, next to them describing it with such a flat affect. It was just kind of odd to hear some of them talk about how it was such an intense and emotional and raw experience, but it almost seemed as though they had repressed all these emotions they had associated with it just so they could cope with it by being numb to it. And then for the TED Talk, with the root issue of of PTSD being societal alienation, I thought it was really cool the way that he had compared Native American tribes coming back from war times and tribalizing, and then comparing that to modern day soldiers who come back and could even necessarily have no one that could relate to their struggle. And I also thought that the comments he made about 9/11 being a unifying rather than dividing instance, that people were feeling closer and PTSD symptoms were not as prevalent because everyone was feeling that universal trauma. So I thought it was really interesting, and I don't know if I necessarily agree that the alienation is the root cause of PTSD, because I do think that some soldiers do experience significant trauma while they're in combat zones and war zones, but I think the alienation has a lot to do with the healing process. So rather than it being the root cause, I think it has a lot to do with hindering soldiers' ability to heal from the trauma they experienced during war times. So it's more so, it's not the alienation that causes it, but it is the alienation that prolongs it, if that makes sense. And those are my thoughts. Thanks.